Hey everyone! Sometimes it can be confusing when thinking about if you want to freeze the lane or push. One easy way to think about it is that if you lose in extended trades or are easily ganked, you will probably want to freeze. Just like in the opposite situation where you win extended trades, you want the enemy laner to push into you, then run them down the lane on champions like Aurelia or Darius. So in this video, we're going to be analyzing C9 Licorice playing Swain vs Aatrox in Korean Challenger. We'll be able to see the power of freezing and how it can be punished as well. As always, let's break down the matchup first. Aatrox is a melee bruiser versus Swain, an AP control mage. Swain has more range and more poke, while Aatrox has a sustained advantage in terms of health and mana, and wins in extended trades. Also, Swain has more wave clear, but it costs a lot of mana to utilize. Basically, if Swain pushes, Aatrox can combo him and run him down the lane before level 6, and at level 6 the matchup gets a little more even in terms of a straight 1v1, but Aatrox still has a slight advantage since he can bait out Swain ult, then back off. So, Licorice's game plan will look like this. Mission 1, let the wave push. Pushing the wave is just too risky as an immobile mage versus a bruiser. Mission 2, thin the wave. We don't want the wave to get too big that we can't hold a freeze or trade. Mission 3, freeze and harass when they go for CS. We want to be able to harass Aatrox to the point where it's really dangerous to be far up in the lane and make it easy for our jungler to gank. Alright, let's get into the gameplay. At the start of the game, the enemy team invades Licorice's red buff, which really sucks for top lane, especially in high elo or LCS for a few reasons. What this does is, it makes Licorice's jungler Lee Sin start blue buff, knowing that Pantheon is going to steal his red. So Lee Sin will want to go from his blue to Pantheon's red, then Pantheon will go from Lee Sin's red to his own blue. This is also called splitting the map or vertical jungling. It makes top really volatile because it forces your jungler to only be on the bottom side of the map for the early game, and their jungler to be on top side, which of course means the odds of getting ganked top side is a lot higher. What does this mean to you? Basically, if this happens in your own elo, it's even more important you freeze early on and play safe, because if you push, your jungler can't help and top lane will be really hard to survive. Anyways, as laning starts, Licorice puts a ward in Tri-Brush right away to make sure he doesn't get level 2 ganked by Pantheon, then goes into this top brush staying out of vision until Aatrox gets to lane. The reason for this is to discourage Pantheon from wanting to come top, since he's not going to waste his time going to a lane that nobody is in. A concept that we have talked about in a few of our recent videos. He comes out of the brush, uses his Q to grab all 3 low health minions, then looks to chase down Aatrox for an auto attack for his Klepto rune. The window for him to push up this far is really small. He can only do this before the next wave arrives because the wave will aggro him and do way too much damage. Once it gets here, he starts backing off, and Aatrox knows he can't continue to chase, so he turns around as well and is now on the offensive. But once Licorice is back in his wave, he's safe to lane normally. But if you noticed, at the very start of that, when Licorice first came out of the brush, Aatrox used his Q, hitting Licorice's backline minions, so mission 1 is done. Since the wave is pushing, he's going to start missions 2 and 3 and thin the wave plus harass with his Q and some auto attacks when Aatrox steps up too far. When I say too far, it means whenever Aatrox is far enough up in the lane that the ranged minions won't aggro him. Then he walks up and uses Q on the minions again to thin the wave some more. After that, he has another window to look for harass since the wave was thinned properly, so he walks up and gets some nice harass with his E, Q, and some autos. The window is the same as before. Once the next minion wave arrives, he backs up again. Aatrox walks up to grab some CS, so Licorice harasses with his Q and autos, making sure to proc his Klepto as much as possible. The wave management so far has been perfect. He's making sure the wave is always pushing to him, but thinning it the perfect amount that it never gets big enough that he can't trade. As the next wave arrives, Licorice uses his E on the whole wave plus Aatrox to thin, and Aatrox makes a small mistake here dodging the E with his dash. Aatrox's dash is an essential part to his trading pattern, especially against ranged champions. And he didn't need to use it here because the safest place to be to avoid Swain E is exactly where he was standing, in the middle of the wave but not too close to the ranged minions. This is because Swain E stops on the first thing it hits on the way back. They both collect their CS, then when Licorice goes for some harass, Aatrox lands 2 parts of his Q and his W for a decent chunk of damage. On the way out, Licorice lands his own combo, EWQ and some autos, dropping Aatrox to 25% health. Landing skill shots can be difficult, but there are some tricks to make it easier. For example, when Aatrox was running away and Licorice was looking to land his E, he knows to use it at this angle because players almost always dodge the opposite way you are moving. So you can bait this movement by moving down or up, then sending the skill shot the opposite way like Licorice does here. It's hard to explain and better to see through visuals like this. Anyways, this trade was super important because Lee Sin was on his way looking for a gank. Lee goes in, gets Aatrox to flash away, then Licorice flashes in to finish him off. You might be wondering what happened to the vertical jungling I was talking about earlier and why Lee shouldn't be topside. Well, after Pantheon took Lee's red, they fought 2v2 mid and Lee got both kills so he can path normally from there. As they go to push in the wave, Pantheon shows up from river and Licorice lands a clutch E to snare him and they burst him to 10% health. But since Pantheon crits when you have really low health like this, they don't want to continue to chase and back off. Licorice recalls and needs to decide to use his TP or not. He needs to use it here because the wave is even, so he's losing CS. So he TPs and the first thing he does is drop a ward and Tri-Brush. This is really important to do because the wave is in a spot right now that it will slow push to him, and good top laners will call their jungler over right now to wait for the enemy laner to TP like Licorice just did, then cheese gank them, and since they won't have TP, they miss a huge slow pushed wave. When he goes back to laning, he still has to be cautious of Pantheon, so he's going to focus more on grabbing his CS over harassing. When Aatrox walks up to trade, Licorice grabs the cannon minion and backs up. Then Aatrox comes back in, so Licorice uses his E looking to trade back a little. While that's happening, look who shows up on the ward that he placed. Through good use of his W, Licorice escapes the gank but lost 50% of his health. Now imagine if he didn't place that ward. He would die here, then lose this huge slow pushing wave and then lose top lane for it. After that gank, he's going to stand back pretty far away since he needs to wait for his potions to heal him up, and the wave is slow pushing to him anyway, so he won't miss anything. The wave is closer now, so he walks up and uses Q to grab some CS and thin the wave. The wave is huge, and in high elo, when a top laner stacks a huge wave like this, the odds of the enemy jungler looking to dive in when it crashes is really high. So if he can thin the wave and freeze it, Pantheon won't be able to dive, but if he can't get the freeze off, odds are they're going to look for it. Aatrox comes back to lane, and Licorice is forced to back away since the blue wave is too big to handle at this point. He doesn't want to walk up and trade, get chunked, then it makes a dive even easier. Aatrox finishes pushing in the wave, and there's Pantheon looking to dive. At that moment, Licorice needs to think about if he can survive the dive or not. If he can't, he needs to back off and let these minions go. But since he has so much health, he decides to go for the 2v1. Aatrox tanks tower first, then Pantheon finishes him off with a Q. But Licorice makes a really smart play and gets an auto off on Pantheon to drop his passive shield, and luckily the tower was firing for a while, so the last shot did enough damage to kill Pantheon. Either way, this was a net loss for Licorice since he lost a big wave and now Aatrox has a level lead on him. When he gets back to lane, the wave is going to slow push towards Aatrox, which is the opposite of what Licorice wants to do right now. So when this happens, you want to focus on shoving the wave in as fast as possible, and if they engage on you like Aatrox does here, you have a huge minion wave to back you up, but it will ultimately be your call if you need to back away or continue trading like Licorice does. The wave resets now, and Lee Sin is waiting in the brush looking for a gank. Licorice isn't going to change the way he is playing and give it away, he's just going to play normal until Lee goes in. Lee ward jumps behind Aatrox, but Aatrox dashes at the perfect time to get kicked towards his tower, then pops his ult and destroys Lee Sin. Licorice backs off for a second, then lands his E, then turns on his ult waiting for Aatrox's ult to run out. He doesn't want to kill him while he's in his ult since he will be invulnerable for a few seconds, giving him time to get away. Then as soon as Aatrox's ult is gone, Licorice pops his own ult, getting the kill. Alright, nothing really happens for a while from this point, so let's hop into the recap. At the start of the game, the enemy team invaded Licorice's red buff, so he made sure to ward early and let the wave push. He made sure to harass and thin the wave and make sure the wave never crashed into the tower. Eventually, Aatrox got low enough that Lee came up to gank, which got Licorice his first kill. Then he needed to TP back to lane since he would miss too much CS if he didn't, but made sure to ward his Tri-Brush as soon as he TP'd to avoid getting cheese ganked. Then about 30 seconds after, Pantheon came looking for a gank on that ward he put down. Through good use of his W, he escaped the gank with half of his health, but since he was too low to walk up and thin the wave, Aatrox stacked a big wave and they dove Licorice, but Licorice had a really clutch auto attack on Pantheon to drop his passive and let him trade 1-for-1. When he got back to lane again, the wave was slow pushing towards Aatrox, so Licorice made sure to push as fast as possible since he doesn't want to be that far up in the lane as Swain. The wave reset, and Lee came top again looking for a gank. He messed it up a little, giving Aatrox a kill, but then Licorice caught Aatrox with his E and killed him as soon as his ult faded. That's going to be it for this one, thanks for watching.